Hello children, how are you all? I hope you all are fine and you might have enjoyed a lot in your summer holidays, but I believe that you might have completed your assignments also. So today, again, it's a time to come back to your studies. So we'll start a new topic in your English class, that is story writing. As you all can see on the board, it is written story writing. So we'll discuss what actually is story writing. Children, I don't think that there is a need to tell you what actually is a story, because you all might have been listening to so many stories since your childhood, sometimes from your parents, sometimes from your grandparents. So I hope all of you know very well what actually a story is. A story is a work of fiction, or you can say that story is a work of imagination. And I hope you all have a lot of imagination. You all are full of creativity, so you can create the stories with the dialogues, with the characters, according to your imagination. So, today's task is to understand what story writing is. To listen to the stories is a different thing. To narrate a story to someone is a different thing. But writing a story is quite different from both of these. So before we learn how to write story, we'll know what are the key elements of story writing. If you try to understand what actually are the key elements of story writing, definitely you'll be able to write a very beautiful story with beautiful characters, beautiful dialogue, beautiful scenes and beautiful description. So let's see what are the key elements. There are in all 5 key elements of a story. Number 1 is characters. I hope all of you know very well that without characters there cannot be a story written by anyone. So characters are the most important part of a story. If we talk about characters, there is a suggestion that fewer are better, that the characters should be few in number. There should not be many characters in a story, because many characters with many dialogues, with many actions can create a lot of confusion. So, to make your story simple and interesting, we should keep in mind this important point, that the characters should be few. So, we can keep a point in mind, that is one protagonist. Protagonist, I hope you know that one main character. There should be one main character in the story and a few side characters. Okay? So let's move on to the second point, that is setting. What actually is setting? Setting consists of the time frame and place in a story. If we talk about the time frame, in your syllabus, you have to write a short story, and this short story should continue from one day to a few days, or a few days to a few years only. Alright? So, the suggestion for the children, for the students to write a short story is that there should be a short time span in the story. One more part of the setting is there is the place. If we talk about the place, this is actually the beginning, where the action begins. It talks about the beginning of the story, and I hope all of us understand very well that if the beginning of the story is interesting, definitely the reader will take a lot of interest in the rest of the story. So, we have to keep in mind that the description of the place in the beginning of the story should be very vivid, should be very poetic, and should be very clear and simple. So, I hope you understand what is setting It comprises of two things: time frame that should be short and place that should be described clearly. Okay, now the third point is plot. If we talk about plot, plot consists of events and characters' actions. When we talk about plot, this actually is about the sequence of the events in the story. So, about the sequence of events in the story or about the plot, we have to keep one thing in mind, that is the sequence of all the actions, the sequence of all the events should be logical. That means they should be placed logically one after the other. Okay? Now, let's move on to the next point, that is a conflict. Conflict is a very important key element of every story, because not generally, but most of the time, you might have seen that there is a problem, there is a tension, there is a conflict in the story. Until unless a conflict or a problem is introduced by the writer in the story, the reader will definitely not take any interest, or you can say reader's interest cannot be sustained without a problem in the story. So, most of the time a problem is introduced to the story by the writer, and rest of the story, like the dialogues or the actions of characters, work towards resolving this problem. And as soon as this problem is resolved, the story is over, finished. Next and the last point is theme of the story. What actually is the theme? I hope all of you know very well. The theme of the poems, the theme of the story. The theme of the story means the central idea of the story. What is the central idea? The main idea around which the whole story revolves. All the dialogues, all the actions, all the characters, all the settings, everything revolves around the central idea, or you can say the whole story is woven around this theme. So, the writer has to be very, very careful in choosing the theme for his story so that the interest of the reader can be sustained throughout the story. I hope all these 5 points, 5 key elements are quite clear to all of you. Number 1 is characters. For characters, the most important thing that we have to keep in mind is fewer are better. Characters should be few in number. The next one is setting. If we talk about setting, we are talking about the place and the time frame. The time frame should be short because we are going to write a short story, and the stipulated word limit by CBSE for writing short story is 120 to 150 words. Alright children, I hope you understand that the time span in the story should be short. Next is the place. The place is also a part of setting. So the place in the beginning of the story or throughout the story should be vividly described and should be described very, very beautifully. Next is the plot. Plot consists of actions, sequence of events that should be logical. And next is the conflict. Without a conflict, the story will not be interesting at all. And the next one is theme. Theme is the main idea, the main theme, the central idea of the story. So, I hope you all have understood what are the key elements of story writing, of writing a short story. Children, try to revise all these points, and in the next lecture, we will definitely discuss a few stories and how all these 5 points are applicable to these stories. We'll try to understand, and we'll discuss a few examples, and we'll discuss a few questions also. Alright? Okay then.